That is the worst clip in the history of television.
The Holocaust isn't about race. It's about man's inhumanity to man.
Let's talk about The View, the show that somehow manages to keep us both entertained and bewildered at the same time. It's a daily showcase of loud opinions, awkward moments, and the kind of comments that make you ask yourself, did they really just say that? If you've ever doubted that daytime TV could reach new levels of absurdity, well, this show has you covered.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Now, I've got to admit, I've always thought it'd be fun to be a guest on The View, but let's be honest, that would probably end in pure chaos. So instead, let's take a stroll through some of the most uncomfortable, cringeworthy moments from the show. Trust me, what you're about to see will make you question everything you thought you knew about live television.
I've had a lifelong ambition to actually be a guest on The View. They'll never have me on, of course, because it would go.
But before we dive in, let me ask you for a quick favor. If you're enjoying this content, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It's free for you, and it helps us a ton to keep bringing you content like this. Done? Awesome. Let's jump back into the madness. So, first on our list, a moment so infamous that it's hard to believe it even happened. Imagine this. One of the hosts, trying to make some sort of bold political statement, instead blurts out, "If you kick every Latino out of this country, who's gonna clean your toilets?" Yikes. Talk about a facepalm moment. The air in the studio froze, and the rest of the panel desperately tried to move on from the verbal train wreck, but the damage was already done.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
What's worse is that she clearly thought she was making some profound anti-Trump argument, but instead it ended up being one of the most cringe-inducing, racially insensitive remarks ever made on live TV. The panel's awkward attempts to salvage the situation only made it more painful to watch. Sometimes you really have to wonder how these moments slip through in a production with that many cameras and producers.
I love that she's trying to make an anti-Trump argument. She's like, I can say anything I want. And she's like, I'm going to say something super racist. They're all like, yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Now, if you thought that was bad, let me tell you about another gem from The View, one that took things to a whole new level of ignorance. Enter Whoopi Goldberg with a comment that left everyone in shock. In one of the most tone-deaf takes in the history of the show, she said, "The Holocaust wasn't about race." Yes, that's what she said, and no, it wasn't some kind of slip-up. In her attempt to boil down the Holocaust to man's inhumanity to man, Whoopi completely ignored the fact that it was a targeted, racially motivated genocide. The Nazis weren't just attacking people for no reason, they were systematically trying to eliminate an entire race. Her remark wasn't just historically inaccurate, it was deeply offensive to the memory of millions of victims. This isn't some philosophical discussion, it's basic history.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race. It's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
But it's about white supremacy. It's about
but
going
it's
after
not, it's
Jews
not about
and
race.
gypsies
But these are two white groups of people.
By reducing such a horrific event to a vague act of cruelty, she undermined the reality of what happened. It wasn't just inhumanity, it was a deliberate plan to annihilate a people based on their race. Flattening it down to some generalized cruelty is not only ignorant, but it also diminishes the enormity of the tragedy. It's moments like these that leave you wondering, how could someone with such a large platform get it so wrong? And the irony? Whoopi is usually the first to call out anything she sees as racist. Yet somehow, she managed to completely miss the mark when it came to one of the most racially driven atrocities in history. It's honestly mind-blowing.
That is the worst clip in the history of television. Ask the Nazis. The entire Holocaust was about race. All of it. Which is why they didn't just pick on Jews who observed Judaism. They picked on anyone who had quote-unquote Jewish blood. The entire thing was about race.
It's about man's inhumanity to man.
It's about a genocidal attempt to exterminate the Jews, which has a thousands-of-year-old history. And yes, it was rooted in race. And yes, anti-Semitism is different. And yes, you are a complete stupid idiot. My God.
But hold on, we're just scratching the surface here. Next up, Whoopi Goldberg steps into the thorny topic of abortion. Brace yourselves. With all the confidence in the world, she turns to the men on the panel and hits them with this. None of you have eggs, so how dare you talk about what a fetus wants? Yes, you heard that right. The old, you don't have ovaries, so your opinion is invalid card. But let's take a moment to break this down. First off, a huge contradiction here. Aren't we constantly told that gender is fluid? Whoopi, are you really saying that unless you have eggs, you're not qualified to talk about certain topics? Are we backtracking on everything we've heard about inclusivity and gender identity? By this logic, should we now tell postmenopausal women they no longer have a say either? Careful, Whoopi, that's a slippery slope.
Do any of you men have any eggs or the possibility of carrying a fetus? How dare you talk about what a fetus wants? You have no idea.
Hold on a second. If you're enjoying this content and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. We've got more exciting topics coming your way. Oh, and let's not forget, if you're applying that rule, Whoopi herself isn't exactly in the prime childbearing years. Should that disqualify her from weighing in? If we follow her own logic, maybe she should sit this one out too. And her take on fetuses? Come on, Whoopi, we were all once fetuses. I think it's safe to say that none of us at any point would have been cool with being stabbed in the head and vacuumed into a sink. The fact that this even needs to be spelled out shows how far off the mark some of these arguments go.
Are you saying that some women can't be men and some men can't be women? Are you saying that unless you have eggs, you're not a woman? Is that what you're saying, Whoopi Goldberg? Also, if that is the new standard, how about women who are postmenopausal? Whoopi Goldberg, I can have an opinion on what a fetus would think because I was once a fetus. In fact, spoiler alert, every single one of us. I know this is crazy. And you know what I can pretty well guarantee? Fetuses don't like being stabbed in the face and sucked into a sink.
Moving on, let's talk about race. Because you know, The View can't go long without stumbling into yet another racial controversy. Remember the Miss Universe pageant when Zozibini Tunzi from South Africa gave a heartfelt speech about how women with her skin tone and hair weren't considered beautiful? Completely fair and valid point. And then Joy Behar steps in to make things weird. Do her words resonate with you at all? Because you're black. Oh boy. You could practically hear the collective cringe. It was as if Joy reached deep into her subconscious and pulled out the most awkward, tone-deaf line imaginable. Seriously, asking someone to speak for their entire race? That's a hard pass.
She said, I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me with my kind of skin and my kind of hair was never considered beautiful. So, do her words resonate with you at all?
But hey, the awkwardness doesn't end there. Whoopi's blunder about Israel? Oh, you remember that, right? She actually compared Israel to Hamas and the Taliban. Yes, really. And when called out, she tried to backtrack by saying, well, it depends on who you talk to. Sorry, but no. There are some things that just don't depend on opinion. Hamas is a recognized terrorist organization. It's a fact, not a talking point up for debate. That's like asking whether gravity is real depending on who you ask. No, Whoopi, there are objective truths in this world.
Tweeted something comparing the US, Israel, Hamas, and the Taliban as all terrorist organizations.
Depends on who you talk to.
Right, well, I mean, that's how they're recognized as...
It's mind-boggling that Whoopi is somehow seen as the wise elder of the show. Are we really looking to her for insightful guidance? You might want to reconsider that. But it's not just Whoopi, The View is a collective effort in cringe. Let's not forget Joy's brilliant argument that words like blackmail and black sheep are inherently racist. Her suggestion? We need to rethink them. Because, you know, black is always negative, right? Come on. By that logic, we're gonna have to remove blackboard from schools and rename black holes in science. It's absurdity on full display.
You know, it's interesting that a lot of the English language has to be rethought. Blackmailing is negative, black sheep, negative. I can think of a few others if I had the time, but those words are kind of like embedded in our psyches and maybe need to be changed. Why is a black sheep a bad thing and a white sheep is a good thing? I don't think that kids in this country are learning our history.
And then there's their take on education. According to The View, young people today have no clue about slavery, Jim Crow, or Franklin D. Roosevelt. Apparently, we're all too ignorant to understand history. Excuse me? Last I checked, American history is drilled into students in schools across the country. But sure, let's go ahead and pretend the only thing missing from modern education is more identity politics. Kids might know more about microaggressions than the Constitution at this rate, but that's a whole other discussion.
They're not learning about slavery. They're not learning about Jim Crow. They don't understand the history of black Americans in this country. If they did, they would then understand white privilege better. So my suggestion is start teaching this stuff. It's deplorable, again, that word, that they do not learn history, period. I mean, people who are young, under 50, don't know who FDR was.
What is she talking about? We all learned in school about slavery and Jim Crow and FDR.
And speaking of wildly off-base takes, let's touch on their view of the political spectrum. The hosts had the nerve to claim that the Republican Party has moved further to the right than the Democrats have moved to the left. What parallel universe are they living in? Today's Democratic platform barely resembles anything from the JFK era, yet somehow the GOP is the extremist party? Sure.
If you look at all the studies, the Republican Party has moved further to the right than Democrats have to the left. There's a Pew Research Center analysis that finds that on average, Democrats and Republicans are farther apart ideologically today than at any time in the past 50 years. And that ideological divide breaks down to the Republican Party being an extremist party, and the Democratic Party actually, as you just mentioned, Sarah, moving more to the center.
What in the... what?
In the end, watching The View is like observing a bizarre experiment on how far you can stretch the limits of logic and get away with it on national television. Each episode is a goldmine of bad takes, misinformation, and straight-up nonsense. And yet, somehow, people keep tuning in. Why? Because, let's face it, we all love a good train wreck. And The View is the daily derailment of reason we can't stop watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when we post a new video. Also, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.